The transport ship cut through space like a blade. Colonel Jake Harrison stood at the observation window, watching the planet Kessler 7 grow larger as they approached. The world below glowed with deep orange and green colors. Mountains stretched across the continents. Vast forests covered most of the land. It was beautiful, and it was full of resources that Earth needed badly. Jake was a military man. He had fought in 3 wars across 3 different star systems. He did not scare easy, and he did not doubt himself. When Earth needed someone to lead the first human colony on Kessler 7, they chose Jake Harrison. He had accepted, without hesitation. The warning from the Galactic Council still bothered him, though. Not because he feared what they said, but because they seemed so sure. The Valorians, the most advanced species in the known galaxy, had sent a formal message weeks ago. "Do not go to Kessler 7, they wrote. "The creatures there are too dangerous. Every species that tried to settle this world failed. We do not understand why you would attempt this suicide." The Thri, another advanced race, sent their own warning message. Same words, different tone. They offered to help with other planets. They offered to send ships to defend any colony Jake chose. But not here. Never here. Jake had shown these messages to Earth Command. The response was clear. Earth was running out of resources. The population was growing. Other worlds took too long to develop. Kessler 7 had everything humans needed in one place: metals, water, energy sources, land for farming. The risk was worth it. That was the decision. That was why Jake was here. The ship descended through Kessler 7's atmosphere. Below them, the landscape became clearer. Huge trees rose from the ground like towers. Rivers cut through forests like silver lines. The air showed no signs of pollution or damage. The world looked wild and untouched. Jake turned from the window. His second-in-command, Captain Sarah Quinn, was running final checks on the colony equipment. Sarah was small and quiet, but she was smart. She had studied alien biology for 15 years before joining this mission. She knew more about other species than anyone on the ship. Jake had asked her opinion about the warning. Sarah had just shrugged and said that the council was probably cautious. That did not mean the danger was real. That did not mean failure was certain. Jake respected that answer. Lieutenant Marcus Cole was preparing the security team. Marcus was younger, only 32, but he had military training that most people never got. He could fight with weapons or without them. He could lead men through combat zones. He could keep people alive when everything tried to kill them. Jake had chosen Marcus specifically for this reason. The colony team included 200 people. Engineers, doctors, farmers, scientists, and soldiers. They had everything needed to build a new home on Kessler 7. They had buildings that could assemble quickly. They had power generators. They had weapons and defenses. They were ready. The ship landed in a clearing that had been chosen by satellite scan. The ground was flat and open. The forests were far enough away to give warning if anything approached. The team moved quickly, unloading supplies and equipment. Within the first day, walls went up around the landing zone. By the third day, the main colony center was finished. By the first week, the colony looked solid and protected. Nothing attacked. This surprised some of the soldiers. They had expected violence from the moment the ship touched ground. But the forest stayed quiet. The skies stayed empty. Only the sounds of insects and distant animal calls broke the silence. Jake used this time wisely. He sent survey teams out in protected vehicles. They mapped the area. They took samples of the soil and water. They noted where resources were located. Within 2 weeks, they had a clear picture of what the area offered. Metal deposits in the mountains. Fertile land near the river. Geothermal energy available if they drilled deep enough. The colony could work. The warning seemed overblown. On the sixth day, Sarah had an idea. She wanted to study the local animal life. She wanted to understand what creatures lived here and how they behaved. Jake agreed and gave her a small team. They set up observation posts at the edge of the forest. They used cameras and sensors to watch animals from a distance. What they found was interesting. The animals were large. Many species seemed to hunt together. They communicated with each other somehow, though the exact method was unclear. They avoided the human colony but did not seem to fear it. They simply stayed away. Marcus reported that perimeter sensors had picked up movement in the distance. Large movement. Something big was moving through the forest, parallel to their location, but it kept its distance. When Marcus wanted to send soldiers to investigate, Jake told him to stand down. They were here to observe, not to hunt. If the animals wanted distance, Jake would give it to them. On the seventh day, everything changed. Sarah was reviewing data from the observation posts when the alarms started. Not soft alarms. Loud alarms that meant danger. Marcus was on the radio immediately, calling soldiers to defensive positions. Jake ran to the command center where displays showed the colony's cameras and sensors. The camera feeds showed movement at the forest edge. Lots of movement. At first, Jake could not understand what he was seeing. The shapes were too large, too coordinated. They moved like water, flowing between the trees. Dozens of them. Maybe more. Then one stepped into clear view, and Jake understood why the Galactic Council had warned them. The creature was massive. It stood at least 3 meters tall. Its body was covered in thick scales that looked hard as metal. Its legs were powerful, built for running and jumping. It had 4 arms, not 2. Its head was large with eyes that glowed faintly in the fading light. Its mouth opened, revealing teeth the size of a human's hand. This was no simple animal. This was a predator. A true predator. The creature screamed. It was a sound that made Jake's teeth hurt. It was not a sound that any throat should make. It was anger and hunger and intelligence all wrapped together in one terrible noise. More creatures appeared. They stepped out of the forest as if they owned the world. Because Jake realized they probably did. This was their world. The humans were just visitors. Visitors with walls and weapons. Marcus's voice came through the radio. Jake, we have movement on all sides. They are circling us. At least 50 contacts. Possibly more. Jake watched the screens. The creatures moved with purpose. They tested the wall. They looked for weakness. They communicated with each other through screams and low rumbles that made the ground shake. One jumped at the wall. Its massive body hit the barrier with terrible force. The wall held, but just barely. The creature fell back, then charged again. Others joined it. They threw themselves against the wall like a wave, testing its strength. Jake understood then. The warning had not been wrong. The warning had been weak. It had not captured the true danger of this place. The creatures kept coming, throwing themselves at the wall. The sounds they made were not the sounds of animals. They were the sounds of intelligent hunters trying to break into a cage where their food was hiding. Jake made his decision. This colony would survive. Humans did not come all this way to fail. They would adapt. They would find a way. But first, they would have to live through the night. The night lasted forever. The creatures attacked without stopping. They charged the walls in waves. They screamed and howled. They tested every section of the barrier, looking for weak points. The defenders stayed ready, weapons charged, ready to fire if any creature broke through. Jake stood in the command center and watched his people work. They were scared. He could see it in their movements. But they held their positions. They did their jobs. They kept the colony alive. At midnight, the creatures finally stopped. They retreated to the forest edge and sat watching the colony. Their eyes glowed in the darkness like lanterns. They never fully left. They just waited. They watched. It was worse than the attacks because it meant they were thinking. It meant they had a plan. Marcus came into the command center, covered in sweat. He had been at the wall the entire time, managing the defense. "They are smart," Marcus said. "They attacked together. When we fired on one section, they tested another section at the same time. They know how guns work. They understand killing weapons." Sarah was already at her station, reviewing the video feeds. She had watched the entire attack, studying the creature's movements. "They are communicating," she said, not looking up from her screens. "Look here. This creature screams, and then that group moves to attack a different section. This one makes a low sound, and they all stop attacking at once. They have some kind of language." Jake watched the footage that Sarah showed. She was right. The creatures were not just fighting on instinct. They were coordinating. They were using sounds to give orders. Jake made his first decision as colony commander. Kill orders only if they get inside the wall. Everyone else, weapons ready but not shooting. Marcus looked angry. "Colonel, they will kill us if we do not hit them first." "I know," Jake said. "But Sarah is right. They think. If they think, maybe they can choose to stop attacking. We will not know until we try. By morning, 10 people were dead. 20 more were wounded. The attackers had found a weak point in the south wall and broken through in 3 places. The soldiers had closed those gaps, but at a cost. People had died protecting the colony. People had been ripped apart by claws as long as swords. People had been killed in ways that left everyone shaking. Over the next days, things got worse. The creatures, which Sarah named the Keth based on a sound they made often, attacked every night. They killed and died. The colony's ammunition supply grew smaller. The number of wounded grew bigger. People started talking about evacuation. People started talking about giving up. 3 weeks into the siege, Lieutenant Marcus came to Jake with bad news. "Command is pulling us out," Marcus said. "They are sending a transport ship. We have 4 days to prepare for evacuation. That is an order from Earth." Jake closed his eyes. Failure. That was what evacuation meant. That was what going back meant. Sarah interrupted before Jake could respond. She walked into the command center carrying a small device and her datapad. "I have something to show you both," she said. They gathered around her screen. Sarah had been recording every attack, every movement, every sound the Keth made. She had spent hours analyzing the data. "Look at this," Sarah said, pointing to a clip. "This Keth was hit by a gun. See how the others respond. They do not scatter. They do not run. They come back and protect it. They move it away from danger. They are protecting their own kind." She showed another clip. "This group here. Watch the young one. It is smaller, less aggressive. See how the large ones position themselves around it during the fight. They are protecting it, keeping it safe from our weapons." "What are you saying?" Jake asked. "I'm saying they have families. I am saying they care for their young. I am saying they are not mindless killers. They are intelligent. They are rational. They are just hungry, and we are in their territory." Marcus shook his head. "They kill us. That is all that matters." "No," Sarah said. "They kill us because they are predators and we are food. But predators have reasons. They have patterns. If we understand the pattern, maybe we can change how we respond." Jake looked at the data. He looked at the clips of creatures protecting their young. He thought about the warning from the Galactic Council. They had said other species failed. They had not said it was because the Keth were mindlessly evil, just that they could not coexist. Jake made a decision that would change everything. "Hold evacuation," he told Marcus. "Send new orders to Earth Command. Tell them we are trying a different approach. Marcus looked shocked. Colonel, that is mutiny. Earth Command gave a direct order. Then let Earth court-martial me after we succeed, Jake said. Tell them we are stopping all offensive actions against the Keth. No more killing unless they get inside the walls. No more hunting them. No more aggression. You want to just let them attack us? Marcus's voice was angry. No. Jake said, I want to show them we are not their enemies. Sarah was already moving. She started preparing equipment. She wanted to set up observation points further away from the colony. She wanted to study the Keth in detail. She wanted to learn everything about them. Jake gave her permission and protection. He assigned soldiers to guard her, but with orders not to shoot unless Sarah was in direct danger. Over the next 2 weeks, something strange happened. With no more human attacks, the Keth attacks became less frequent. They still came to the walls. They still tested the defenses. But they seemed to be learning that these particular humans did not kill them unless forced to defend themselves. Sarah made contact with a young Keth that had been separated from its pack. She did this slowly, carefully, with food and non-threatening movements. The creature was scared at first, then curious. Then, incredibly, it came to her. She named it Corden. It was young, probably no more than 3 years old in Keth years. It was intelligent and fast to learn. It learned that Sarah meant no harm. More than that, it learned that the colony meant no harm as long as the colony was left alone. Through Corden, Sarah began to communicate with the larger Keth packs. Not through words, but through actions and patterns. Keth understood intention. Keth understood boundaries. Keth understood that the humans wanted to live here, just like the Keth wanted to live here. By the 4th week, the attacks had stopped almost completely. The Keth still circled the colony. They still watched from the forest. But they were no longer trying to kill everyone. Jake received a new message from Earth Command. They had seen Sarah's reports. They were cautiously interested in this approach. The evacuation was delayed. They wanted to see if this would work. Jake stood at the wall and looked out at the forest. Somewhere in those trees, the Keth were watching him. They were big. They were deadly. They were intelligent. And somehow, Jake thought, humans had to find a way to share this world with them. It was not going to be easy. It was not going to be simple. But Jake Harrison did not come to Kessler 7 to fail. He came here to survive. And somehow, he was going to find a way for both humans and Keth to do exactly that. Sarah spent more time outside the walls than inside them now. She had Corden as her guide, her friend, and her connection to the larger Keth world. The young Keth had accepted her completely. It would come when she called. It would sit near her while she recorded data. It would bring her gifts. Strange things like shiny rocks and pieces of meat from fresh kills. Jake allowed this because Sarah kept proving that it was safe. More than that, she was learning things no human had ever known about a truly alien intelligence. She was learning that the Keth had reason, that they had feeling, that they could make choices beyond simple hunger and violence. David Park was an engineer. He had been assigned to help build the colony. But lately, he had been working with Sarah. She had asked for him specifically because she needed someone who could think about problems differently. David had already helped her set up better communication equipment. Together, they built markers and displays that showed simple ideas to the Keth. Safe. Friend. Food. Lisa. Harper was the colony's main medical officer. She had volunteered to study Keth biology using Corden as a subject. The young creature did not mind. It seemed to enjoy the attention. Lisa discovered that Keth had a unique dietary need. They needed a specific mineral that was only available in certain plants on Kessler 7. Without this mineral, they would become weak and sick. This was important information. Sarah realized it immediately. If we can grow these plants, Sarah said to Jake, we can trade with the Keth. We can give them what they need. In return, they give us what we need. It is simple, but it might work. Jake approved a plan. David started planting fields where the mineral-rich plants could be grown. Lisa worked on preserving techniques so they could store the plants year-round. Sarah continued her study of Keth behavior and language. Week after week, the understanding grew. Sarah learned that Keth lived in family groups. Each group had a leader, usually the biggest and strongest male. The group hunted together, ate together, and protected each other fiercely. They had mourning rituals when one of their kind died. Sarah had actually seen this. When a Keth hunter was killed by a different predator, the others had gathered around its body and made low sounds for hours. It was not so different from human grief. The big breakthrough came when Sarah finally saw the leader of the main Keth pack. His name came through Cordon's calls and sounds, but Sarah spelled it Vex. He was enormous, easily 4 meters tall. His scales were darker than other Keth, almost black. His body was covered in scars from countless fights. His eyes were intelligent and careful. Vex watched Sarah from a distance at first. He did not attack. He did not approach. He simply observed. He studied the human female the way she studied him. It was a battle of patience and courage, but not a battle with weapons. One day, Sarah did something bold. She walked directly toward Vex, slowly and with her hands open and visible. Marcus nearly shot her. Jake ordered him to stand down. Sarah had earned the right to take risks. She walked until she was only 10 meters from the massive Keth leader. Vex did not move. He did not growl or threaten. He simply waited. Sarah knelt down. She was making herself small. She was showing that she was not a threat. She was showing respect. Vex tilted his head. He was studying her with those bright, intelligent eyes. Then he made a sound, a rumbling call that echoed through the forest. Other Keth emerged from the trees. They surrounded Sarah, but kept their distance. Sarah did not move. She waited. For long minutes. Nothing happened. Then Vex took one step forward. Then another. He stopped right in front of Sarah. His head was larger than her entire body. His breath was hot and smelled of raw meat. His claws could rip her apart in seconds. Instead, he lowered his head. He let her touch his scales. They were warm and hard, like stone. Sarah put both her hands on his head and felt the muscle and bone underneath. She could feel his heartbeat, strong and steady. This was contact. This was communication. This was the moment when everything changed. Over the next days, Sarah brought Vex food. Not hunting leftovers, but the plants that the Keth needed. She brought them in containers that she left at the forest edge. Vex and his pack would take them. They would eat them. Then they would bring back meat to the colony. Fresh kills? Large animals that posed a threat to the human settlement. It started as trade. But it became something more. David had the fields producing enough of the mineral plants within 6 weeks. Lisa had perfected the storage method. Now the colony had a steady supply to trade. The Keth had a steady source of the minerals they needed. The trade benefited both species. The other colonists slowly understood what Sarah had discovered. These creatures were not monsters. They were not evil. They were just different. They were predators living in a world that required hunting to survive. Humans were prey species refugees trying to build a home in a predator's world. But coexistence was possible. It was possible because of understanding. It was possible because Sarah had been patient enough to look past fear. Jake called a meeting with his senior team. Sarah, Marcus, David, and Lisa sat with him in the command center. The Galactic Council said other species failed here. Jake said, I think I know why. They came as conquerors. They wanted to dominate. When the Keth defended their world, they fought back harder. It became war. And nobody wins a war on a predator's world. But we came as refugees, Sarah said. We had no choice but to try something different. We had to find a way to live here. And the Keth understood that. What about our original mission? David asked. We came for resources, and we will get them, Jake said. But not by killing the Keth, by working with them, by showing them that we understand their world and respect it. Marcus still looked uncertain, but he was starting to understand. The military man in him wanted to fight. But the survivor in him saw something better. He saw a way for his people to actually live long-term on this world. Sarah had one more thing to report. The Keth were territorial. They controlled specific hunting areas. But there were large sections of the continent that were not claimed by any pack. If humans were careful, if humans followed Keth law and respected their boundaries, there was room for both species. Jake made the decision that would define the colony's future. Tomorrow, we stop calling them predators. We start calling them neighbors. We are going to build a relationship with the Keth that is based on respect and cooperation. This colony will not fail because we learned something the Galactic Council did not understand. We learned that any intelligent being can choose peace if given the chance. As night fell, Sarah stood at the edge of the colony and watched the forest. Somewhere in the darkness, Vex and his pack were resting. The creatures that had attacked so fiercely weeks ago were now partners in survival. It was not the future anyone had expected. But it was a future that just might work. 3 months into the alliance, Jake had just started to believe they would actually survive on Kessler 7. The colony had expanded. The trade with the Keth was working perfectly. The mineral plants were thriving in the fields. Keth were bringing increasingly large kills, providing fresh protein that made the human diet easier to maintain. For the first time since landing on the planet, people were talking about the future with hope instead of fear. Sarah had pushed the boundaries of communication even further. She and David had created a simple system of symbols and sounds that Keth and humans could both use. It was not perfect, but it worked. She could explain simple ideas. The Keth could make their intentions clear. This shared language had helped avoid several misunderstandings that could have turned violent. Lisa had made another discovery. The Keth had their own medicines, herbs and roots that they used to treat wounds and illness. She had learned to recognize these and had even started using them on human patients with good results. The exchange of knowledge was making the colony healthier and stronger. Jake was in his office, reviewing reports when the alarms started. Not the Keth perimeter alarms. The deep space detection alarms. Something big was coming toward Kessler-7. Marcus was in the command center within seconds. The sensors showed a ship. Not human. Not Keth. Something else entirely. What is it? Jake asked. Unknown configuration, the sensor officer reported. It is large, and it is moving fast. Weapons hot. Impact in 2 hours if we do not move it. Jake felt his chest get tight. The Galactic Council had warned them about interference. They had warned that other species might try to stop the human colony. But Jake had thought they had more time. He had thought the colony would be stronger before that happened. Get word to Sarah, Jake said. Tell her to warn the Keth. We have a problem. Sarah was already at the forest boundary when she heard the news. She found Vex within minutes. The large Keth leader listened to her description of the incoming threat. She showed him the symbols they had developed. Danger. Enemy. Not Keth. Not human. Vex understood. He made a deep sound that echoed through the forest. His entire pack emerged from the trees within minutes. Other packs came too, called by the signal. Within an hour, dozens of Keth had gathered near the colony. The ship descended through the atmosphere with weapons firing. It was not trying to land. It was trying to destroy. The first laser strike hit the southeast section of the colony walls, burning a hole through the barrier. The second strike hit one of the storage buildings, sending debris flying. Marcus returned fire with the colony's defensive weapons. The ship was heavily shielded, but some shots got through. It wheeled back into the sky, preparing another attack run. That was when the Keth moved. They came out of the forest like a wave. Dozens of the massive creatures ran toward the burning hole in the wall. They did not attack the humans. They did not attack the colony. They formed a line between the colony and the sky, putting their own bodies in front of the expected attack. The ship came back down. The weapons fired again. The laser struck 3 Keth directly. They screamed and fell, burned and bleeding. But more Keth came to replace them. They were offering themselves as shields. No. Jake screamed, "Get them back. We do not want them to die for us." But Sarah was watching something that Jake could not see. She pointed up. The ship was changing position. "It is trying to circle," she said. "It wants to attack from another angle." Jake understood in that moment what they needed to do. This was not a human problem or a Keth problem. This was a problem for both species to solve together. "Marcus, send teams to every section of the wall," Jake commanded. "Coordinate with the Keth. Use them to cover weak points." Marcus was already moving, already shouting orders to his soldiers. Within minutes, human soldiers and Keth were standing together at every defensive position. The humans had guns. The Keth had speed and strength and massive bodies. The ship made another attack run. The humans fired their weapons, hitting the ship's engines. The impacts did damage, but not enough. The ship fired its weapons again, targeting the wall. This time, when the laser struck, it hit Keth and humans alike. A soldier named Henry Chun screamed as he was knocked backward, burned by the energy discharge. Immediately, a Keth beside him was there, picking him up and moving him to safety. A young Keth was struck directly. The soldiers did not hesitate. They moved the injured creature away from the wall and brought it to Lisa. The battle was chaos, explosions, screaming, death coming from the sky. But humans and Keth fought together because they understood something crucial. The enemy threatened them both. They stood together or they died separately. The ship made a third attack run. This time, something was different. As the weapons fired, the Keth did not just stand and take the hits. They moved. They timed their movements with human gunfire. When humans fired and the ship tried to dodge, the Keth charged forward. The combination was devastating. The ship's engines suddenly exploded. Thick smoke poured from the port side. The vessel wheeled away, climbing back toward space. It was damaged. It was running. The humans and Keth let it go. They had won. The celebration was brief because the work was immediate. Lisa had 6 wounded Keth in the medical facility. She had 4 wounded human soldiers. The colony had damage to repair. The Keth had bodies to mourn. 1 Keth had died protecting a human soldier named Robert Price. The Keth had taken a direct laser strike meant for Robert and had fallen immediately. Its pack had mourned it right there at the wall, making those low sounds of grief, while human soldiers stood with them in respectful silence. That night, Jake sat with Sarah and Vex. The large Keth leader was wounded but would survive. The laser had burned part of his shoulder and torn open his side. Lisa had treated the wound with a combination of human medicine and Keth herbal remedies. Jake wanted to explain. He wanted to apologize for bringing this danger to Vex and his pack. But Vex did not seem angry. The large Keth made soft sounds while his fingers carefully touched the place where his wound had been treated. Sarah translated, though she was not entirely sure of the meanings. He says, "We are no longer guests. We are family now. Family protects family." Jake felt something break open in his chest. He had brought people here to build a colony, He had expected to struggle against nature and predators. He had never expected to find a home that included creatures he had feared. The next morning, reports came from the Galactic Council. They were asking what had happened. Multiple ships from several different species had been sent to eliminate the human colony. All had been turned back. All had been defeated. The council wanted answers. Jake composed the message himself. "Tell them," he said, "that Kessler 7 is no longer available for conquest. Tell them humans and Keth now share this world. Tell them that when you attack one, you attack both. And tell them that what we have learned here changes everything they think they know about coexistence." The message was sent. And Kessler 7, the world that was supposed to be impossible, became a beacon of hope for a galaxy that had forgotten how to see potential instead of problems. The news spread through human space like fire. The colony that was supposed to fail had not just survived. It had thrived. It had done something no one thought possible. It had formed a genuine alliance with an apex predator species. The Keth, creatures that were supposed to be uncontrollable and dangerous, were working side by side with humans. They were trading. They were protecting each other. They were building something new together. Earth Command was shocked. The Galactic Council was bewildered. Scientists wanted answers. Military leaders wanted to understand how this had happened. Religious leaders wanted to know if this changed the definition of intelligence. Philosophers wanted to understand what this meant for civilization. Jake was still focused on practical matters. The colony needed to expand now that the immediate threats were handled. More people were coming from Earth. The Keth packs were growing, and they wanted to establish better relations with human settlements. There was work to do. Sarah had been nominated for multiple scientific awards. Her studies of Keth intelligence and behavior were being studied in every university across human-controlled space. Universities were asking her to teach. Governments wanted her to advise them. She had turned down most offers because she was not done learning. Kessler 7 still held so many secrets. The Keth still had so much to teach. David had become famous as an engineer. He had designed the first structure that was jointly built by humans and Keth. The building was built in a way that accommodated both species. The doors were tall enough for Keth to walk through without lowering their heads. The materials were strong enough to support both human equipment and Keth tools. It became a symbol of what cooperation could achieve. Other colonies wanted to replicate the design. Lisa had published research on comparative medicine that was changing how human doctors approached treatment. The Keth had knowledge about plant medicine that went back generations. Combined with human chemical medicine, it created possibilities that neither species could achieve alone. Marcus had been promoted to general. He was now responsible for training the new soldiers who were being sent to Kessler 7. His military strategy had changed. He was no longer teaching soldiers how to conquer. He was teaching them how to coexist, how to respect strength instead of dominating it, how to see an opponent as a potential ally. But the biggest change came from Earth. Ambassador Elena Foster arrived on Kessler 7 8 months after the battle with the Scorvan ships. She came with official recognition from Earth government and the Galactic Council. The alliance between humans and Keth was now legal. It was official. It was real. Jake brought Elena to meet Vex. The two leaders stood at the gates of the colony, human and Keth facing each other. Vex was fully healed now. His scar from the wound was visible on his shoulder, a mark of his sacrifice. Jake stood beside Vex. Together, they looked out at the colony that was no longer a desperate outpost. It was a home. Elena took images. She recorded video. She made reports that would be transmitted back to Earth and to the Galactic Council. This moment mattered. The image of human and Keth standing together would change how the galaxy saw both species. Elena spoke with Sarah for hours. She wanted to understand how this had all happened. Sarah explained her approach. Instead of seeing the Keth as monsters, she had looked for reasons. Instead of attacking, she had observed. Instead of conquering, she had communicated. It was simple, really, Sarah said. But simple things are often the most powerful. Elena also visited the joint markets where humans and Keth traded goods. The sight was remarkable. Keth showing their finest kills to human merchants. Humans displaying their best manufactured goods. Money changing hands in agreement. Both species benefiting from the exchange. It was business. It was cooperation. It was peace. She visited the medical facility where Lisa was training both human and Keth in healing techniques. The Keth were surprisingly good at understanding human anatomy. They had their own medical knowledge. Together, they were creating something revolutionary. Elena asked Jake what the future looked like. More colonies. Jake said simply, not just on Kessler 7, but on other worlds. Other species will come here and see what we built. Some will want to replicate it. Some will want to destroy it because they are threatened by it. But humanity has shown something important now. We have shown that we can think beyond conquest. Elena nodded. The Galactic Council is already talking about it. There are other apex predator species on other worlds. Species that were written off as impossible to negotiate with. Now people are asking if we were too quick to judge. That is good, Jake said. The universe is bigger than any one species. And every species has more potential than we usually assume. That evening, there was a celebration. Both humans and Keth gathered in the central square of the colony. It was large enough now to hold everyone. Food was abundant. Humans brought prepared dishes. Keth brought fresh kills that some humans had learned to cook in their own style. Music played, human instruments mixed with Keth percussion that their large bodies could create. Sarah watched as young human children played with young Keth. The children did not see predators and prey. They saw new friends. They saw playmates. They saw the future. Lisa saw a human doctor showing a Keth how to read human medical instruments. The Keth was taking notes, literally writing with a modified pen held in one of his 4 hands. Knowledge was flowing between species. Marcus watched as human soldiers and Keth warriors trained together. They were learning each other's techniques. They were becoming stronger as a unit because they learned from each other. David was already planning the next expansion. More buildings. Better trade facilities. A school where young Keth and young humans could learn together. Jake stood with Elena and watched it all. This was what the Galactic Council had said was impossible. This was what the warnings had told them to avoid. This was what they had built anyway. Elena turned to Jake. The Council will want to send more ambassadors. They will want to study this. There will be negotiations. I know, Jake said. But the pattern is set now. We showed it is possible. Others will follow. What do you think this means for humanity? Elena asked. I think it means we are finally growing up, Jake said. For so long, we fought everything. We conquered. We dominated. We assumed might made right. But out here, surrounded by creatures more powerful than us, we learned something different. We learned that survival is not about being the strongest. It is about being the smartest. And being smart means understanding your neighbor instead of destroying them. Elena smiled. You should tell the Galactic Council that directly. Jake shook his head. I am a soldier, not a politician. But you can tell them. Tell them Kessler 7 proved that any 2 intelligent species can find common ground if they stop looking for reasons to fight and start looking for reasons to build. As night fell over the colony, the Keth made their low calls of contentment. It was not quite music, but it was close. It was the sound of a species satisfied with its place in the world. The humans who heard it no longer felt fear. They felt peace. Kessler -7 The world that was supposed to be uninhabitable had become a symbol that change was possible. That understanding could overcome fear. That strength was not about domination, but about partnership. The age of human isolation had ended. The age of human potential was just beginning. And it all started with one woman who had the courage to look at a predator and see not an enemy, but a possible friend.